She is a racist single mother, until a black man falls for her, struggling to feed her child. After her husband's death, before we begin, we want to share something special with you all. This story is based on a real-life event shared with us by one of our dear viewers. Of course, to respect their privacy, we've changed the names and certain details, but the essence of the story remains true. We wanted to bring this powerful and emotional journey to you. As you listen, reflect on what you hear and share your thoughts afterward. Meghan Parker's life had always been one of comfort. A single mother, she lived in a beautiful home in the suburbs of Atlanta, her world filled with luxury and ease. Every day was a reflection of the success she had built: high-end shopping, social events, and endless possibilities. She never had to worry about the little things. Life was easy, and her world was well guarded. She didn't know much about hardship, nor did she care to. To her, the struggles of others were distant, almost irrelevant. But everything changed in an instant, when her husband Nathan unexpectedly passed away. What followed was a betrayal that she never saw coming. Her husband's business partner, Raymond Ellis, seized everything: the wealth, the business, the home. Suddenly, Meghan found herself struggling to keep it all together. What Meghan didn't know was that her world was about to collide with someone who would force her to confront the truth she had long ignored. Malik Johnson, a passionate lawyer who believed in justice for all, would become the catalyst for her transformation. Meghan Parker's world had always been one of ease and luxury. Her home was a beautiful two-story house in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in Atlanta. The driveway was lined with expensive cars, and her carefully curated life was lived behind the gates of security and comfort. Everything around her was pristine: gleaming marble floors, high-end furniture, and walls adorned with art that only the wealthy could afford. As a single mother, Meghan had worked hard to build her life, but she had never truly known struggle. She had always relied on the security her wealth and status provided. Her son, Luke, went to the best private school money could buy. Their holidays were spent in tropical destinations, and weekends were reserved for high-end shopping sprees and luxurious dinners. The world outside her walls, filled with poverty, hardship, and suffering, felt like a distant reality. She had never needed to concern herself with things like social justice, inequality, or systemic issues. Those were problems for other people. People who didn't have the privilege of a life like hers. She saw the news and heard about injustice, but it always seemed like something far removed from her own life. To her, everything was simple: work hard, maintain the wealth, and live comfortably. But even in her ignorance, there was something undeniably fragile about her perfect world. Meghan was well aware of the fragility of life. Her husband, Nathan, had built their wealth and security, and his sudden passing had reminded her that no one's world is unshakable. But even then, it was hard for her to see past her own privilege. She had always believed that hard work and good fortune made her different from others, immune to the struggles they faced. One afternoon, while Meghan was organizing some documents, in her office, she met Malik Johnson, a lawyer who was passionate about justice. He was there to talk about a case, but his words quickly turned to something far more personal. He asked her bluntly, "How much do you think your wealth shields you from the world's suffering? Do you think you're immune to the same injustices that other people face every day?" Her response was quick, defensive. "I work hard for what I have. I've earned my place. Others can do the same." Malik's calm gaze didn't waver. "But how many people had the same opportunities you had to begin with? How many people start with the same chances as you?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. Have you ever been forced to confront an uncomfortable truth? What did you do? Before we dive into the story, I want to take a moment and pray for all of you. May you find strength and peace through the challenges life throws your way. May your hearts be filled with understanding, compassion, and love. As you listen to this story, may it inspire you to be kind, open-minded, and strong, no matter what life may bring. If you find yourself struggling or questioning your own path, know that you are never alone. And always remember, growth and change come from within. We also invite you to share your thoughts on this story in the comments below. What do you think? Is this the kind of story you'd like to hear more of? Or do you have suggestions for other types of content we could explore? We're here to listen and improve with each story we share. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring content. The first time Meghan Parker met Malik Johnson, it was in the most unlikely of places, her home office. Meghan had called Malik to discuss a legal issue concerning the company her late husband had built. At first, their conversation was cordial, focused on paperwork, business, and the usual formalities. However, there was an underlying tension that neither of them could deny. Meghan had invited Malik in, and as he stepped into the luxurious space, she couldn't help but notice the contrast between his casual attire and the pristine environment around them. Malik was wearing a simple suit, professional yet far removed from the designer clothes and polished world Meghan had come to expect in her circle. His presence seemed almost out of place in her expensive, immaculately decorated office. His eyes, sharp and unflinching, scanned the room before meeting hers. The slight shift in his demeanor made Meghan feel uneasy, but she tried to shake it off, attributing it to nothing more than her own discomfort with someone so different from the usual people she worked with. As they discussed legal matters, Malik's demeanor remained calm, but Meghan could sense a growing undercurrent of something deeper. Something that made her feel slightly challenged. She had always been in control, always surrounded by people who agreed with her worldview, people who lived in similar privilege. But Malik was different. He was unaffected by her wealth and the luxury that surrounded them. It was as if he could see past it, into the person she truly was. After a few moments of silence, Malik finally spoke, his voice steady but direct. "You've built a life of luxury, Meghan. But tell me, do you ever stop to think about how many people never had the same chance you had? The kind of opportunities you had, were they available to everyone? Or just to those born with privilege?" Meghan froze. She had heard questions like this before, but never so bluntly. Never from someone like Malik. She had always assumed that hard work was the answer, that those who succeeded deserved it, and those who didn't simply didn't try hard enough. "I don't see how that's relevant," Meghan replied quickly, her voice a little sharper than she intended. "I worked hard for what I have, and I've done everything by the book." Malik's gaze didn't shift. He leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but unwavering. "But how many people started with the same advantages you had? The same education? The same resources? Not everyone gets the chance to succeed, Meghan. Some are born into circumstances that they can't control." Meghan's hands tightened around the pen in her hand, her mind racing. She had always prided herself on her self-made success, the life she'd built from the ground up. It was hard for her to accept that maybe, just maybe, her success wasn't as purely earned as she believed. "I'm not sure I agree with you," Meghan replied, her tone defensive. "I believe anyone can make something of themselves if they try hard enough. That's the system I believe in. That's the world I live in." Malik's expression softened slightly, but there was still a hint of something, almost like pity, beneath his calm exterior. "I hope you're right," he said, standing up to leave. "But sometimes the system isn't fair, and sometimes it takes someone outside your world to show you that." As Malik walked out the door, Meghan was left standing in the middle of her office, the room suddenly feeling much too large, much too silent. Her thoughts were scattered, the words he had said swirling in her mind. For the first time in a long time, Meghan felt uncertain, as if the life she had carefully constructed was being questioned in a way she hadn't expected. Meghan's house was still a symbol of wealth, even in the aftermath of the emotional upheaval caused by her husband's death. The expensive furniture, the perfect landscaping outside, and the opulent surroundings felt like a constant reminder of the life she had worked so hard to maintain. But lately, everything inside her seemed unsettled. After her conversation with Malik, her once clear worldview had begun to waver. His words echoed in her mind, challenging everything she had long believed to be true about success, privilege, and hard work. One afternoon, as Meghan sat down to lunch with her parents, the pressure to return to the familiar comforts of her old beliefs was palpable. Her mother, Julia, sat across from her, her hands folded neatly in her lap as she sipped her tea. Julia had always been a pillar of the family, a woman who never questioned the way things were, and she didn't like it when things shifted, especially when it came to Meghan's perspective. "So, Meghan," Julia began, breaking the silence, "I've been hearing a lot about this lawyer, Malik Johnson. What's all this talk about him? Helping you with your business? He's not from the circles we usually deal with, is he?" Meghan felt a slight tension in her shoulders. She had told her mother about Malik, but only in passing, never going into detail about their conversations. She hadn't shared the unease she felt or the doubts that were beginning to creep into her mind. "I just thought he might be able to help with the legal matters, Mom," Meghan replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "He's experienced, and he seems to know what he's doing." Her mother's eyes narrowed slightly, her tone skeptical. "I don't know, darling. He's not from our world. He doesn't understand how business works the way we do. You need people who think like we do. People who get it. Don't let him mess with your head. You've done fine without people like him." Meghan's stomach tightened. She hadn't realized until now how deeply her family believed in the status quo, how they viewed anyone who wasn't part of their circle with suspicion. Her father, sitting beside her, cleared his throat and chimed in. "Your mother's right, Meghan," he said, his voice gruff but kind. "We've built this life on our own. No one handed us anything. People like Malik, they have an agenda. They want to shake things up, but you don't have to buy into it." Meghan's heart sank. She hadn't expected such a strong pushback. She had always known her family to be traditional, but she hadn't anticipated them resisting so strongly when she started questioning her own beliefs. "Maybe I'm just trying to understand things better, Dad," Meghan said quietly, not meeting their eyes. "There are things I don't know, and Malik's been making me think about them." Her mother scoffed. "Think? What's there to think about? You've got everything you need. You're better off than most people could ever dream of. Why are you wasting your time on these ideals? What good does it do to feel guilty about your success? People like him. He'll have you thinking you owe the world something." Meghan felt a sharp pang in her chest. Her parents had always taught her that success was a reflection of personal effort, that their wealth and comfort were earned. They had never once acknowledged the advantages they had or the doors that had been opened for them because of their status. It was a harsh truth that she had never confronted until now. As her mother continued to speak, Meghan's thoughts swirled. She remembered Malik's words, the way he had challenged her thinking, the way he had spoken of privilege, justice, and equality. But now, sitting here with her family, it was easier to go back to what she knew, to what they knew. She could easily dismiss Malik's message and stay within the bubble of security her family had built. It was tempting, but something inside her resisted. "I don't think I can just ignore it, Mom," Meghan finally said, her voice wavering. "There's more to it than just making money and living comfortably. Maybe there's something we can do to help people who don't have the same opportunities we did." Her father's face hardened. "Meghan, that's idealistic nonsense. You can't change the world by feeling sorry for people. You work hard, and you earn your place. That's how it works. You don't owe anyone anything. People get what they deserve. You've worked hard. Don't let anyone make you question that." Meghan sat back, the weight of her family's resistance pressing down on her. The doubt she had felt earlier was now fully formed. She had spent her life believing that hard work and success were all that mattered. But now, as Malik's words echoed in her mind, she wasn't so sure anymore. Could she continue to live in her comfortable bubble, or was it time to confront the uncomfortable truth about her privilege and the systems that had kept her and others, like her, safe? The conversation around her continued, but Meghan's mind was far away, caught between the life she had always known and the one Malik had shown her was possible. It was a cold Thursday afternoon when Meghan first witnessed something that would forever change the way she viewed Malik Johnson. After their tense conversation a week earlier, she had spent countless hours reflecting on his words. Words that had ignited an internal fire in her. Yet, despite the guilt she felt for questioning her privilege, she still didn't know how to act on it. She didn't know what her place was in a world so full of injustice, but one phone call would bring everything into sharp focus. Malik had called her office, asking if he could stop by to discuss a matter related to the legal case. Meghan agreed, expecting another business-related meeting, but she was not prepared for what she would see when he arrived. When he stepped into her office, he wasn't alone. Behind him, she saw a young woman, barely in her 20s, holding a small child in her arms. The child was wrapped in a threadbare blanket, his face pale from the cold. The woman looked exhausted, her face strained with worry. Malik introduced her simply, "This is Jasmine. She's facing eviction, and her son needs medical care. She doesn't have anywhere else to turn." Meghan's first instinct was to reach for her phone, to offer a donation, or find some way to help. But Malik shook his head before she could say a word. Jasmine needs more than money. She needs someone who understands how the system is stacked against her. She needs someone who can fight for her. The sight of the young mother clutching her child, her eyes full of hope and desperation, hit Meghan harder than she expected. There was a vulnerability in Jasmine's expression, an unspoken plea for help that transcended anything Meghan had ever experienced. She had seen people like Jasmine, the struggling, the forgotten, on the news or in passing, but she had never been forced to truly look at their struggles. Malik didn't offer her any grand speeches. Instead, he turned to Jasmine and said, "We'll get through this, don't worry. I know the law, and I know how to fight back. I won't stop until you have the help you need." His words were firm, but they carried a compassion Meghan had never seen in a lawyer before. He wasn't just working for a paycheck, he was working for change. As the meeting progressed, Malik laid out a plan for Jasmine, how they would approach the case, what steps they would take to fight the eviction, and how they could ensure her son received the care he needed. Meghan listened, fascinated by the calm determination in his voice. He didn't just talk about injustice, he worked toward fixing it. His commitment wasn't about his reputation or money. It was about making a real difference in someone's life. Meghan found herself both impressed and ashamed. Here was a man who didn't just talk about fairness. He acted on it, day in and day out. He didn't need to explain his values or his motivations. His actions spoke louder than words ever could. In that moment, something inside Meghan shifted. She had always seen the world through the lens of privilege, believing that hard work and ambition were enough to overcome anything. But Malik had shown her that sometimes, it's not about individual effort alone. It's about fighting against a system that often keeps people like Jasmine down. Meghan couldn't stop thinking about the way Malik had interacted with Jasmine. It wasn't just the way he had offered help. It was the way he treated Jasmine as an equal, not as a victim or someone to pity. Malik didn't look down on her for asking for help. He saw her as a person with rights, with dignity, and someone deserving of respect. In that single encounter, Malik had done something Meghan hadn't realized she'd been craving. He made the world feel just a little bit fairer. As the days passed, Meghan found herself reflecting more and more on what she had seen. The kindness, the resilience, and the fierce determination that Malik had shown had broken through the walls she had so carefully built around herself. She had lived in a world where success and wealth were measured in numbers and status, where the problems of others could be easily ignored because they didn't directly affect her. But Malik had opened her eyes to something more, something deeper. She began to understand that privilege was not just about having money. It was about access to resources, opportunities, and most importantly, empathy. It was about being able to walk through life with the assumption that the system was designed to support you, rather than work against you. And for the first time, Meghan felt guilty. What had she done to help those less fortunate than herself? She had donated to charities, yes, but she had never actually tried to understand their struggles, never bothered to see the systems that kept them trapped. She had always assumed that hard work was the solution to every problem. But Malik had shown her that sometimes the fight wasn't about working harder. It was about fighting against the system. Meghan knew she had to talk to Malik again. This time, she wasn't sure what she would say, but she knew she had to thank him for opening her eyes, for making her question the life she had always taken for granted. When they met again, Meghan was different. There was a warmth in her voice, a new openness in her eyes. "Malik, she started, pausing as if unsure how to phrase her thoughts. "I can't thank you enough for what you did for Jasmine. It's clear now that I've been blind to so much. I've lived my life thinking that privilege was just the result of hard work. But you," she shook her head, "you've shown me that it's about more than that. You've made me realize that I can't just live in my bubble anymore." Malik smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I'm just doing what I can, but we all have our roles to play in this world. It's never too late to make a change, Meghan. Have you ever seen something so clearly that you couldn't ignore it anymore?" The day the eviction notice arrived at Jasmine's door was the day Meghan's life began to change forever. The overwhelming wave of helplessness that had plagued Jasmine for weeks now had an official stamp on it. It was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a battle against an entire system. Meghan had promised Malik she would help, but now, with the eviction imminent, the gravity of the situation was far more real than she had ever anticipated. Meghan stood outside the small apartment, gazing at the eviction notice in her hand, the weight of it almost unbearable. She had witnessed the desperation in Jasmine's eyes, heard the fear in her voice when she called earlier that morning. But seeing the official paperwork was an entirely different matter. This wasn't just about a business deal or a legal case anymore. This was about the stark reality of injustice. This was about people, real lives, being torn apart because they couldn't fight the system stacked against them. Meghan's phone buzzed with a text message from Malik. "I need you here today. Jasmine is being forced out tomorrow. We have to make a stand." Her heart raced. She had been thinking about her own journey, about how Malik's words had planted a seed of doubt that had grown into something much larger. Her comfortable life, her belief that the system worked for people like her, felt more fragile with every passing day. She wasn't sure what had changed inside her, but standing outside Jasmine's apartment, she knew this wasn't just about one woman. This was about everything she had ever known, and whether she could remain silent in the face of such overwhelming injustice. Her mind flashed to her family's words, to her father's cold dismissal of Malik's ideals. She had been taught her whole life to protect her own, to hold on to what was hers, and to dismiss anyone who didn't share her privilege. But now, with the eviction notice in her hand, the weight of those lessons felt hollow. She had spent her life building walls around herself, walls made of wealth, security, and privilege. And it had kept her safe, yes. But at what cost? Malik had been right all along. It wasn't just about working hard. It was about recognizing the systems that kept people like Jasmine from ever having a fair chance. Meghan could no longer deny the truth. She could no longer live in a world where people's lives were determined by their circumstances from birth. The truth was staring her in the face, and the discomfort she had felt for weeks now reached a boiling point. Meghan stood frozen, staring at the eviction notice. But inside her, everything was shifting. She had built her identity on the idea that success was a product of hard work and ambition. She had always believed that if people wanted something, they could work for it, that there were no shortcuts, that the playing field was level. But she knew now that the world didn't work that way. People like Jasmine, people who had to fight every day just to survive, didn't have the same opportunities Meghan had taken for granted. The stark realization that her entire world had been built on an illusion of fairness hit her like a tidal wave. She had seen how Malik had approached the situation with integrity, how he fought for the people who needed it the most. And yet, here she was, standing at the edge of a decision that could change everything. Meghan knew she could walk away. She could stick to her old beliefs and ignore the reality that Malik had shown her. She could return to her comfortable life, where everything was predictable and safe, where no one questioned the systems that had worked in her favor. But that would mean abandoning the very values she now saw as essential: justice, equality, and a willingness to fight for what was right, even when it was hard. The truth was clear. She could no longer ignore the injustice. She had been given a choice, a chance to stand for something greater than herself. And in that moment, Meghan made a decision that would mark the beginning of her transformation. With shaking hands, Meghan dialed Malik's number. As soon as he picked up, she spoke without hesitation. "I'm in. I'll help. We're going to fight for Jasmine and anyone else who needs it." Malik's voice softened with surprise and gratitude. "Are you sure, Meghan? Once you start down this path, there's no going back. It's not just about helping one person. It's about changing the way you see the world." Meghan swallowed, hard, her voice steady but filled with conviction. "I'm ready. I've spent too long ignoring the truth. This is bigger than me. It's time I stopped pretending I can just sit back and let things happen." Malik's smile could be heard, even through the phone. "I'm proud of you. Let's do this." Meghan hung up the phone and took a deep breath, the weight of the decision sinking in. She had chosen to stand for justice. She had chosen to fight for the people who needed her help the most, even if it meant breaking free from the comfort of her old beliefs. Have you ever seen something so clearly that you couldn't ignore it anymore? The decision Meghan had made wasn't an easy one, and the consequences came swiftly. In the days that followed her commitment to stand for justice, the community and her family reacted in ways she hadn't expected. Some people applauded her, while others recoiled in disdain. Her father, once the pillar of her secure world, didn't mince words. "You've lost your mind, Meghan," he said one evening, his voice cold with disbelief. "You're throwing away everything we've worked for. This is not how we do things." His words stung, but Meghan held her ground. She had made her choice, and though the weight of her family's disapproval pressed down on her, it no longer had the power it once did. Her mother, too, was disappointed, unable to comprehend why Meghan would ally herself with someone like Malik, someone from a different world. "You're turning your back on everything we've built," her mother lamented. "This isn't the way to help people. You've always been the responsible one." But Meghan didn't regret her decision. As the days went by, she saw a shift in herself. She wasn't the same person who had lived in the comfortable, insulated world of privilege. The weight of her choices, the sacrifices she had made, felt heavy at times. But at the same time, there was a sense of liberation. For the first time, Meghan felt like she was truly living by the values she had always claimed to hold. values like fairness, justice, and compassion for others. The fight for Jasmine wasn't just about winning a legal case anymore. It was about fighting for the people who had been left behind by the system. The people who had never had a fair shot at the opportunities Meghan had taken for granted. When the court ruled in Jasmine's favor and her eviction was overturned, the sense of victory was not just for one woman. It was for the cause they had fought so hard to champion. The public reaction was mixed. Some praised Meghan's bravery, admiring her willingness to use her resources to fight for what was right. Others, especially those within her circle, saw her as a traitor to the system that had always supported her. But as the days passed, the criticism began to feel less important. She had found something more meaningful than the approval of those who would never understand her transformation. As Meghan reflected on the weeks that had passed, she realized how far she had come. She had made choices that had set her apart from everything she had known. And it wasn't always easy. But the journey had made her feel more alive, more connected to the world and its struggles than she had ever been before. She no longer viewed people like Jasmine as other. She understood the systems that had kept them down. And she understood, too, the responsibility that came with her newfound knowledge. She had taken the first step toward change. Not just for Jasmine, but for anyone who needed a voice in a world that was often indifferent to their plight. But even as she embraced this new chapter in her life, there was a lingering sadness. The realization that she couldn't simply go back to the life she once led. The walls she had built around herself were now broken down, and there was no way to unsee the truth. Malik's words, his persistence in fighting for what was right, had changed her forever. There was no going back, and in that, she found peace. She had sacrificed the old version of herself, but in doing so, she had found something far more meaningful. A few days after the court ruling, Meghan met Malik for a quiet lunch in a small cafe. It had become a ritual, talking about the cases, the injustices they had encountered, and what lay ahead. As they sat down to eat, Meghan looked at Malik, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You were right," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight of sincerity. "About everything. I had to see it for myself, but now, I understand what you were trying to teach me. This fight isn't just about winning. It's about making things right, no matter how hard it gets." Malik smiled, a look of understanding in his eyes. "I'm proud of you, Meghan. You've come a long way, and now you have a chance to be part of something that can change the world." Meghan nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "I just wish I had known sooner, but I can't change the past. All I can do is move forward and keep fighting." Malik raised his glass in a quiet toast. "To change, and to the people who make it happen." Meghan smiled, the journey ahead clearer now than ever before. She wasn't just fighting for others anymore. She was fighting for herself, for the truth she had finally chosen to embrace, and she wasn't going to stop. Meghan sat alone in her office late one evening, the soft glow of the desk lamp casting shadows across the room. Her office, once a symbol of success and comfort, now felt different. The pristine walls and polished furniture no longer held the same sense of security they once did. She had changed. The woman who had once lived comfortably in her wealth, thinking the world was built on equal opportunities and hard work, was no longer the same. But as much as she had grown, Meghan knew her journey wasn't over. The world outside, her office was still filled with injustice, inequality, and systems designed to favor those with privilege. She had made a choice, and it had set her on a path that would be difficult to walk, but one she now knew was worth it. The future, however, was uncertain. There would be days when the weight of the world's problems would seem unbearable. There would be resistance, both from within herself and from others who had not yet seen what she had. Yet there was a sense of peace that settled over her. It wasn't the peace of ignorance or the comfort of an easy life. It was the peace that came with knowing she had made the right choice, that she had chosen to face the uncomfortable truths of her world, even when it was difficult. She wasn't sure where this path would take her, but for the first time, Meghan felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. Meghan had spent so many years living a life of comfort, of certainty, but that certainty had been shattered. She had spent her life believing that success was earned, that the world worked in a straightforward, logical way. But now, standing at the crossroads of change, she understood that life wasn't that simple. There were so many forces at play. Forces of privilege, power, and inequality that shaped the opportunities people had. Looking back on everything she had learned, Meghan felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had learned that justice wasn't just about the law. It was about the people who fought for it. She had learned that privilege wasn't a sign of success, but a sign of the advantages one was born into. And most importantly, she had learned that it was never too late to change, to make a difference, to stand up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. The road ahead was unclear. There would be many challenges, moments when she would doubt her decision, but she was no longer afraid of what lay ahead. She knew that with each step, she would be moving closer to a world where justice and equality were not just ideals, but realities. Meghan had made a choice, and that choice had changed her forever. Malik had been there from the beginning, guiding her through this process of transformation. And when Meghan looked back at how far she had come, she couldn't help but smile as she thought of him. One evening, as they sat across from each other in the cafe, Meghan looked at Malik, a quiet understanding passing between them. "You were right, Malik," she said, her voice filled with a quiet strength. "This path, it's harder than I thought, but I'm glad I chose it. I can't go back, and I don't want to. I'm ready for whatever comes next." Malik's eyes softened and he nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "You've made a difference, Meghan, and you're not alone in this fight. We're in this together." Meghan felt a sense of peace wash over her. The road ahead would be tough, but it was hers to walk now. And for the first time, she wasn't walking it alone. Have you ever had to challenge everything you believed? Let us know in the comments.